New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. Inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know that's the truth, dear listeners. There is no place I would rather be tonight than here with you. I'm your host, Catherine Duca, and you are listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast dedicated to helping you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of genuine self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, connect with your truest essence, and simply live life more easily. Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and effortlessly and organically have more room, more generosity, and more love for others. And as I say each and every time, when have we needed that more? So welcome, welcome. It is Sunday, Mother's Day, and I'd like to wish all of my listeners who are mothers a very happy Mother's Day. I hope you had a good day. I hope you're having a good evening. But, you know, I can't let the day go by without acknowledging some of the other ways in which some people are experiencing Mother's Day. You know, for those of us who may have enjoyed a beautiful brunch today and flowers and candy and all the rest, there are many mothers tonight who are in anguish, in pain. Of course, there are mothers who have lost their children, mothers who wanted to have, or people, I should say, women who wanted to have children and couldn't, or had children, and maybe the children have broken their hearts. Maybe they're estranged, all kinds of things. And so I want to take a moment and acknowledge those mothers, or the women who didn't get to become mothers, but very much wanted to. I also cannot let the day pass without acknowledging all over the world, certainly in this country at this time, the mothers and the children who are anguishing over what is going on. Children who are ripped away from their mothers. You know, you listen to the news. So, you know, I often talk about the different ways in which different people experience the same experience. So we tend to think that Mother's Day is the same rosy for everyone, but for the people I just mentioned, it is anything but. So please, if we can just look inward for a moment and turn our hearts and our open minds to people who are suffering on this day, let's do that, and let's hold them in the highest regard and deep within our hearts. And this goes for, in a month or so, we have another holiday coming up, Father's Day, when we have Valentine's Day. Let's not get lost in our own experience, but let's always keep our consciousness open to others who are having a very different kind of day than the day we may be having. And I like to say that in order to really make a contribution to this planet, we need to be as clear-headed as possible. I think you'll agree with that. If we're preoccupied, self-absorbed, if we have foggy notions, if we are confused, if we just don't have the clarity to step out of ourselves and join others on this planet to make a positive contribution, then we're in trouble, because avoidant, passive, hazy, foggy, self-absorbed minds don't do anything for anyone. So it is up to each of us to shoulder the responsibility for making this country and this planet better than it is. Better than it is. So it is to that end to cultivate inner clarity and greater self-awareness that I am going to turn to the topic at hand tonight. If you've been following along the past couple of episodes, you know that we've been talking about psychological masks. I love talking about this subject because I think at core, the masks we wear really account for a lot of the difficulties many of us encounter. What do I mean by that? Well, psychological masks are the costumes, if you will, the exterior that we show to the world. They're kind of polished and curated and perfected images. They're what we want people to think of us. So while we're projecting this polished image to the world, we're doing something else at the same time. We are hiding, concealing, suppressing, disowning other parts of ourselves. Parts that we deem, parts that we judge to be unappealing, unattractive, parts that if anybody knew, they might reject us or, cast us aside. So we are very intent on looking one way to the world. And not that we don't inhabit those qualities, we do. But the purpose of this is to make sure we are seen in a certain way while we actively work to hide other parts of ourselves. And the biggest problem with this, of course, is that in that gap between what we show and what we really feel, in that gap is where we can feel like an imposter, like an actor, like we're not being genuine, we're not being true to who we are, we're not in alignment because we're not integrated. And life can start to feel like an uphill climb. And not only that, think about it. Think about closeness. Think about emotional intimacy in relationships. If we are walking around with this wide gap, how can people really get close to us? How can we really trust in ourselves and trust that people love us for who they are when we are working very diligently to not let them see deep aspects of who we are? So to this end, we develop these personas, these layers of protection. And what happens? We walk around mask to mask. And when you think about it, it's really a wonder anything gets done. It's really a wonder that relationships survive with this dynamic in place, mask to mask. And as long as we walk around with these masks rigidly intact, I like to say hermetically sealed, then, we're not really in our right mind. We're in a curated mind, but not in our right mind. We're not connected to a higher power. Because a higher power really, not that it can't get through, but we can't avail ourselves of the infinite wisdom and the infinite intelligence and the the unlimited and unbounded like I don't even know what to call it. I don't even have a word big enough. Spirit, the all of which each of us is a part. We can't avail ourselves of that. We can't connect with that with these impediments in our way. Now, for those of you who may be joining me for the first time or are not familiar with masks, I want to be very clear about something. In my introduction, I say this is a podcast where we learn about genuine self-respect and self-love. We learn how to make ourselves a priority in our own lives. Here's the big disclaimer. This is not about the small me. This is not about me. I'm thinking of myself. I want to make myself happy. It's not really, that's not the energy on the conversations that we have together here. This is about, yes, becoming as self-aware as we can. This is about loving ourselves. This is about aligning ourselves, aligning our behavior, our thoughts with our truest values. Because when we do that, as I say in the intro, we have more to give other people. We have more to give other people, not less. So nothing that I say here ever is against anyone else. It's not against anyone else. It's not against any group. It is on behalf of ourselves, of our greatest good. Because when we are in our greatest good, when we're in alignment, we have a flow and we have a connection to something greater. And when we have that, we make better brothers and sisters on this planet. So that is the energy that I hope we can have these conversations with. It's not the small me. It's the self-aware me, the knowing me. Because the more I know myself and understand myself and have compassion and empathy for myself, what happens? The more we have these things for other people. And that just happens naturally. So these past couple of weeks, we've been looking at some specific masks. I think we started with the mask of perfectionism. That was one of my masks. Last week, I talked about the mask of I'm fine. I think that's also one of my masks. The mask of, no matter what's happening inside, I look good to the world. I look like I don't have a care in the world. I'm fine. I'm okay. Tonight's mask is, I think, a very interesting one. And actually, I think I have remnants of this one also. Masks are like that. We don't usually have just one. It's like being left-handed, right-handed. We might have a predominant mask, but we also have others as well. Plus, they overlap. So you may hear some similarities in the mask we're going to be talking about tonight with the masks I've been talking about. So tonight's mask is the mask of extreme self-reliance, also known as the mask of being overly competent. So the mask of extreme self-reliance and the mask of overcompetence. What is that? Well, the mask of overcompetence is the mask that looks to the world like, I've got everything handled. I know how to do things better than most. And that isn't necessarily arrogance. That's largely true. Wearers of this mask happen to be very adept, very expert at handling all kinds of things, logistical things, organizational things, strategic things. They really are masters at it. So they really do things better than most. The problem is, and you may ask, well, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing. Nothing's wrong with being competent. Nothing's wrong with being self-reliant, except when we feel compelled to be that way. What do I mean by that? Well, when we feel we have to be a certain way most of the time in order to get through life and be liked or loved or to get approval or acceptance, that's a compulsion. There isn't much choice there. It's, I have to be this way. And whenever we think to ourselves, I have to do or be anything, the question that you may want to follow up with is, or else what? Or else what? So with regard to this mask, the inner dialogue is, I have to be this way or else I'll be rejected. I have to be this way or else something negative, something threatening will happen. Now, how do certain people get to be this way? What are the factors at play that will cause a person to adopt this particular mask? As we've been talking these past few weeks, certain circumstances, certain family dynamics cause us to adopt certain specific masks. So why this one and not that one predominantly? Well, there are reasons. Now, the mask of extreme self-reliance, and I emphasize extreme, has a link to the past. Don't most things. And adults who find themselves overly or extremely self-reliant, or another word might be self-contained, it's quite possible that these adults, as children, didn't get certain emotional needs met. Their need for guidance, their need for nurturance, their need for protection went unmet. So imagine either yourself as a child, or perhaps you know someone who uses this mask, or perhaps you're in a relationship, or you're related to someone who uses this mask. Here's a little bit of information as to what may have gone on with that person way back when. So if as a child these needs weren't met, that's easy to understand how the child might feel like something very fundamental is missing from the parent or the caregiver. Now, children cannot tolerate, this is an important fact, children can't tolerate, simply because it's too threatening, the idea that their parents are flawed. Now, as adults, we can look back and think that, but children just don't have the luxury of thinking that their parents are flawed. They work with whatever the parent hands them, however the parent behaves. And children who wear this mask likely had parents who were compromised in some way. How? Well, they may have been emotionally unavailable. They may have been emotionally ill. They may have had an actual illness. They may have been abusive, extremely distant, maybe even addicted. You see? So the child, the 7, 8, 9-year-old, grows up with an understanding, but not a conscious understanding, but an intuitive understanding that the parent or parents are not equipped to give them what they need, but they don't find fault with the parent. What they do instead is they appoint themselves, now this is of course unconscious, they appoint themselves their parents' parents. They appoint themselves the providers of these things, because if the parent is any of the things I mentioned, ill, emotionally ill, physically ill, addicted, what have you, the child intuitively understands that the parent needs something, and they take it upon themselves to provide that. So you start to get the picture that the child, I'll say herself, forgive the gender reference, but it's cumbersome otherwise, so I'm just going to stick with her. The child herself goes without the need being met, and at the same time takes it upon herself because she's intuitive, or perhaps the parent is asking for, implicitly or otherwise, asking for something from the child. So the child then, without having the need met herself, has to turn around and give these behaviors, these caretaking behaviors to the parent. Can you see the bind that puts the child in? The child is called upon, or maybe self-appoints herself, to be in the role of nurturer or confidant or protector of the parent. And the parent, by virtue of the circumstances I mentioned, might be kind of a bottomless pit. These are parents, not because they're bad, but because they themselves are hurting. These are parents who don't say, "Oh, sweetheart, you don't have to do that." In fact, they do quite the opposite. They, again, overtly or covertly, have the expectation that the child will take care of them in that way. Can you start to understand the difficulty there? It's really a bind. And so what happens is, and this is really so weighty, I think, weighty, what happens is the child grows into an adult who just internally, implicitly feels that her needs, first of all, are not in the equation at all. And if they are to be in the equation, she assumes that no one is available or equipped to meet her needs. So she just says to herself, almost like taking a vow, but it's really a conclusion. Hey, I have to take care of myself. I have to be self-contained. If I need something, I have to figure it out myself. And then what happens is the cumulative effect of these unmet needs kind of crescendos into an adult who feels that her needs over time are just too much for anybody to meet. They're just too much. They're too intense. They're too powerful. And wow, they better not leak out. And so the suppression of those needs and the enhancement of that belief intensifies. And so you have a person who really, in a very real way, does not have a receptor to receive. Think of it as a, like a surround sound, if you will, or a wall that has no seams. No seams. And so therefore, nothing old or stale can get out. The beliefs can't be released. And nothing fresh or new or restorative can ever get in. The person exists behind a wall of belief that says, I have to do things myself. Now, the upside is these people make wonderful, because they're so competent, they make wonderful employees, business owners. They're self-propelled. People look to them and rely on them. And these people generally do very well in business pursuits, professional pursuits, because, for all the obvious reasons. They don't have to be micromanaged. They are self-propelled. But you can start to feel the inner tension that builds. Now that person is in a relationship, say. That person is going to handle all the needs for the other person. And when the partner tries to give to them, what do you think happens? The overly competent, overly self-reliant person doesn't recognize the giver as giving. They just don't recognize it because they don't have a frame of reference for receiving, for accepting. But that doesn't mean they don't secretly, deeply yearn to be taken care of. This is the paradox of all paradoxes. Underneath that top layer of competence is a real longing and a real yearning. And you know what else? You know what else there is? There's an undercurrent of resentment, because the way it looks from the inside is, nobody gives me anything. When is it going to be my turn? I give everything to anyone and I don't ask for much. And then when these people do have a need that leaks out, if they feel disappointed, the disappointment feels epic. Why? Because what do they say to themselves or to their partners? I don't ask for much. The one time I ask for X, the one time I ask for a favor and you can't give it to me. You see, this is why. This just confirms the whole ball of wax. And the partner is left confused. So this couple might stay together forever, but you can easily begin to understand the dynamic and the frustration on both parts. Now, before I go to the chat, I see there's a number of comments. I just want to say that the beautiful thing is that these overly competent people are secretly and maybe closeted, beautiful, tender-hearted people. They are so loving and so giving, and deep, deep down have such tender hearts. But those tender hearts are, of course, guarded. It's like the Tootsie Roll center with that outer shell. You know, it's too risky. It's too risky to be vulnerable. And not only is it too risky, most of the time, wearers of this mask are not aware. They're not consciously aware. They may be unconscious, but they're not consciously aware that they have these needs. And so they're estranged from themselves. They're estranged from their inner longing. You know, it reminds me of the planes at Newark Airport lately. It's like there's no communication. The radar is dark. And so without that radar, inner radar, we can't communicate with ourselves. We can't help ourselves along. We just magically somehow expect our needs to be met, but we don't have any navigational system for how that can happen. I hope tonight's conversation starts to shed some light into how wearers of this mask can navigate a little more smoothly and a little more effectively. That said, and before we go to break, I'm going to take some comments here. Let's see. I don't know if these are in order. Let me go up here. Let me see. Michelle. Welcome, Michelle. I was wondering the same thing. It's a wonder we connect at all. Well, it is a wonder. And when we do connect, you know, we have to savor it. We have to appreciate it. We have to do more of what works. But too many of us walk around relatively unconnected or disconnected. So thank you, Michelle. Judy, just Judy. Hello, welcome. This sounds as if it overlaps with the independent mask. It does, but it's good to ask for help when it's needed, if you recognize that you need help. Now, I said before that I have remnants of this mask. I do. And I will tell you that personally, I don't have any trouble asking for help. I really don't. I don't have anything against it. And I would say I don't have difficulty asking for help. What I do have difficulty with is recognizing when I need help. I will wring my hands before it occurs to me, pick up the phone and ask somebody for help. Ask somebody what their take is on a certain dilemma I'm having. Ask for advice or something, or just listen. I don't always recognize when I need that. If that bell were to ring, then I could ask for help. But my problem is a step or two before that. So Yes, Judy, you're right. It's good to ask for help when needed, if and when we recognize that we need it. Still, Bill, as you know, I was the all-knowing, yes, I do know, Bill. I was the all-knowing, all-powerful, indestructible Bill. Just listen to that. The all-powerful, all-knowing, indestructible Bill. I had to protect myself from them, my family. Yes, yes. And all of the masks developed out of self-protection, out of the brilliance of the childhood mind. Because we can't find fault with our parents, we will invent a way. We will come up with a strategy to take it upon ourselves and fill in the gaps that way. So, Bill, absolutely. Just Judy again. If the family can't meet the child's needs, perhaps the child looks elsewhere, to a teacher, to a friend, to a pastor, to a neighbor, somebody who is empathic toward them. Yes, absolutely. If they're fortunate enough to have such a person. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why, if you're a neighbor, if you're a teacher, if you're someone in a child's life, don't underestimate the influence you have by being attuned to that child, by meeting that child where they're at, by loving that child unconditionally. Absolutely. All right, let's see. Janine, welcome. People with this mask also get a lot of positive reinforcement from the world at large because they're regarded as being super reliable. That's right. That's right. And I think not only does every mask, Janine, but I would say every quality, just about every quality. I can't speak to the quality of, I can't agree that a quality like cruelty or revenge or sadistic impulses, I can't say that about those qualities, but every other quality has a dual purpose and can be used for a positive outcome or for, I'll say, a negative outcome. So yeah, as I was saying before, these people are self-propelled and they are regarded very highly for their competence, and people rely on them. And that can be a wonderful thing. We need people in charge. Again, if the cost to the self is too high, if we keep this mask in place, A, because we don't even know we have it, but B, because if we know we have it, we don't know how to loosen it, then it's self-perpetuating. And wearers of this mask do another interesting thing. They put themselves in more and more intense positions. You know, the stakes get higher and higher. They take more and more on in order to have that positive reinforcement because they're hungry for acknowledgement. And this is the only way. Let me say that again. This is the only way they know how to get it. So it is self-perpetuating. But, we all know the saying, when we know better, we do better. So I hope this part of the conversation has served to kind of get us all in the mindset to self-examine and ask ourselves, which mask am I wearing? What, how do I stay walled off from people? How do I stay relatively disconnected? Or I'm not so disconnected, but how can I connect more deeply? Well, we have to look to our personas and the facades. Okay? It must be so exhausting. Of course, it's exhausting. But again, the interesting thing, I could say this in 10 different ways. The wearer of this mask doesn't know why she's exhausted. She doesn't know why she's exhausted. So she might take time off or she might, bemoan the fact that, I don't know, something isn't going right, but she's not hitting the nail on the head because she's not aware that she has the mask. And so the exhaustion has no relief valve. You see? Bill says, to put it mildly. Bill, you were kind of exhausted, I think, right? And sometimes, we run the course. The mask runs its course until we can't do it anymore. In fact, I'll say this, and then I'll cut to a break. Most people come to talk to me in psychotherapy or coaching because their mask has given way. They're probably too exhausted to keep it going. And the help that they come in here for, unwittingly, is the help to put their mask back in place. They think I'm going to help them. This is their tacit request. Help me be the person I was before, the overachiever, the overly in charge. I liked it that way. I liked it that way because that's all I knew. And anything that isn't that can feel very destabilizing. So people are initially a bit surprised when I do not help them do that. I help them look within because, and we'll talk about this, I promise, when we come back, what that mask conceals is golden. It is beautiful. It is energy, stagnant energy that when freed up can do wonderful things. It is amazing. The thing we least expect is the thing that really sets us free. Join me after the break and we'll talk about that very notion. So you are listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Let's take a short break. Stay with me. We'll be right back.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Catherine Duca, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? Before the break, we started talking about the mask of extreme self-reliance, also known as the mask of overconfidence. And we talked about the upside of that, how wearers of this mask are wonderfully in charge people, and they do a lot, and they handle a lot, and they are competent and people rely on them and look to them, and that's all wonderful. And they make great managers, great bosses. They run households impeccably, on and on and on. But there is a downside. And the downside is they feel compelled to be this way. And they can't let any neediness leak out. In fact, to an overly competent person, need is every bit a 4-letter word. It is really taboo. One of the worst things you can say to such a person is that they're needy. It's an abhorrent way to feel. And we talked about why that is so. Oftentimes, the child had to take care of a parent who could not provide that for the child. And in so doing, they simply learned to be alone in a sense, handle challenges by themselves and not look to anyone to help them out. Right? So in this part of the show, I'd like to talk about what those who wear this mask, what they can do gently and with self-compassion to start to not take the mask off. And incidentally, I want to say something about that, but let me not take the mask off, but just loosen it a little bit. Just kind of pick up the edge and take a peek at what's underneath. I want to say that the goal of dropping our masks isn't literally to drop the mask completely. None of us can walk around like a raw nerve, nor should we. Absolutely not. We need our personas. We are our personalities. But if we are so identified with this persona, so identified that we have no flexibility, no give, no room to be any other way, that's where, that young tree in the winter time, right? We have to bend, because if we don't, what happens? We'll snap. And what does it mean to snap? It means to lash out. It means to get sick. It means to get depressed. And this can really be avoided, or at least mitigated, with this kind of awareness. So I want to talk about a few points, a few things that wearers of this mask can do. I'm going to refer to my newsletter, because the newsletter that went out this morning was on this topic. Those of you who don't get the newsletter but would like to, simply email me at Catherine@CatherineDuca.com. That's Catherine@CatherineDuca.com. And just say in the subject line, add me, and I'll know what you mean, and you will get a copy of the newsletter the very next Sunday at 5:00 in the morning. Okay, so wearers of this mask can learn to relax. They can live in their skin differently, but they have to do a few things first. And these things, I know, are going to seem counterintuitive, right? If you find them so, just put in the chat, counterintuitive, Kathy, come on. But here's what has to happen. They have to first admit that they were emotionally alone as a child. Step one is to rewind those home movies, if you will, and look at yourself back then. Look at yourself as though you're watching a Netflix special, and look at that child and her circumstance. And if what I described earlier went on with you or someone you know, then the first thing that has to happen is the acknowledgement of, oh, wow, that child had to be the parent, the emotional parent. That child went without. What an ouch. What a profound hurt. Even though the child didn't feel it back then as such, looking back, we can easily understand that that's how a child would feel. And what we have to say is, I was that child. So we first have to admit that we were alone. back then. No one really likes this, but as you do it, you start to develop an understanding, and this is step 2, that you in fact craved. Yes, you needed your caregiver's love, guidance, protection. It's the anti-neediness of the adult mindset. It's like, the hard truth is, as a child, I did need someone to look out for me. I did need someone to protect me, to step in, to intervene, to talk to me about how I was feeling, to ask me questions, to brush my hair, to all the things. You have to acknowledge the need. Now, this is a double helix of tough stuff, because A, my young self needed those things, and B, I didn't get them. And how must that have made me feel back then? There's pain there. And so what we have to do is acknowledge the pain. Now, there's good news, semi-good news right now. The good news is, whatever we're afraid to feel, those things have already happened, and we survived them because we're here. What this work is about is the willingness to feel the feelings about what happened, because that's what we couldn't do as children. So now we have kind of a stepwise, almost a protocol, if you will. I had the need wasn't met, and I felt disappointed and alone. When you recognize the need that you had, need or needs, you begin to understand that no childhood need is bad or wrong or shameful. How could it possibly be? So you begin to develop a connection, an understanding, and I'm going to say a relationship with that aspect of yourself. We can call it inner child. But we develop, instead of being, estranged from that part, disconnected from that part, we start to hear that part. We start to understand, I had longings, I had cravings, I needed someone. Because here's the thing, and this is the payoff. When we acknowledge that our young selves had that need, in that moment, we are giving our young selves, I never know what tense to use, self or selves. Forgive me if I'm messing that up. But we give our inner child the time of day. We give our inner child the respect that comes from, I see what you needed, sweetheart. I see what you needed, and I see what you went without. And that is where the phenomenon, the miracle of integration happens. That's where self-connection happens. So you have to kind of walk through the painful reality to understand that child, meet her where she was, and in so doing, you then have her back. And you become, in that instant, something mind-blowing. You become the person that child needed in childhood to protect them or guide them or nurture them. You become, vis-a-vis this mental reconstruction, if you will, you become the person you needed back then and didn't have. You become that to yourself from this moment forward. And that is the most powerful, the most potent thing we can do for ourselves. And that's where we go from being separate from ourselves to connected. We go from misalignment to alignment. And when we're aligned, we're just in better shape. We're just clear-headed. And probably most important of all, not probably, most important of all, we have an open channel. We have access to the miracles all around us. We have access to divine intelligence and an unlimited and abundant spiritual source of love and goodness. And so this is really how it happens. It's a simple process because I just went through it. It's a simple process. It's not easy because we have to go through all the beliefs and all the years and the layers of conditioning. That's what's hard. But the thing itself is quite simple. I often say to my clients, wow, if you saw your childhood in a movie and you stop the, you stop the movie, you freeze framed it right when the child said, "Up, nobody's coming, nobody's here, nobody's going to protect me. I have to do it myself." If you freeze frame that and ask yourself, how do you feel toward that child? How do you feel on that child's behalf? I submit to you, you will have nothing but love for that child. Then what you do is you sort of insert yourself as that child. I was that child. And I can handle the truth that she's carried this whole time. And that, dear listeners, that is a game changer. That is everything. That is really what I think healing is all about on a psychological level that then gives way to a spiritual healing. All right? We talk about be the peace you want to see, be the parent to yourself, be the friend to yourself, be the damn bodyguard to yourself that you were hungry for. And I'm going to tell you one other thing. Leandra, hi there. Good to see you all the way from Knoxville. I love to say that. I get such a kick out of saying that. Thank you for this process. I'm so excited to apply it to heal my inner child. Oh, that really touches me, Leandra. May we all do more of that tonight and going on. I was going to say something. It flew out of my head. I think it'll fly back. But when we become that person, the person we needed to protect ourselves back then, when we become that person, I'll tell you, it's harder to get hurt. It's harder to feel overlooked. It's harder because we have our own backs. And nothing feels as good as that. And that gives way to a sense of security, a sense of stability. That's what I mean when I say we become our own net, our own safety net. We don't have to worry about if anybody finds this out because we found out. We don't want to be exposed because we can't handle the exposure, or so we think. But as Leandra so beautifully said, it's a process, and we can heal ourselves if we choose to embark on this process. And if we hold the consciousness that so many others have either yet to do this work or have begun to do this work or are somewhere along their own journey. Again, the compassion we afford to ourselves, we naturally afford to other people. And that's what healing is all about, I feel. So let's see, I think I got to everybody. Okay, Just Judy, I'm catching your comment here. For the first time, I understand why my 10-member family was unable to provide the nourishment, but I needed as a child. And Catherine, I thank you profoundly for that. Judy, you're welcome. For the first time, I understand why my 10-member family was able to provide the nourishment, but I needed it as a child. Can you hear that? Can you hear the opening in that? You know, when we can give to our inner child, because let me tell you, our inner child will have no problem receiving that from you. And when your inner child receives that love and compassion and that elixir from you, then that child in the adult body can begin to receive from other people. And that's how that wall, how that mask begins to dissolve. And instead of walking around saying, nobody gives me anything, you can begin to say, look at the gifts. Look at the gifts all around me. And where there is trouble, where there is hate, where there is cruelty, where there is indifference, where there is madness, we are strengthened to say, how dare you? Nothing's going to happen to another child as long as I am here. And this is where energetically we become, we become soldiers. We become a stand for justice and for love in this world. So it's not pink paint, it's not Pepto-Bismol, it's not syrupy. It is sober, it is strong, it is relentless, it is do or die. And don't we need that right now? On Mother's Day, when there's so much anguish in the world. And that anguish is there on Father's Day and all these other holidays. Let's harness the goodness and trade the hallmark sentiment for righteous outrage and love channeled into rightful action. Friends, we need a new mind. And you're listening to New Thought Media. This is not an accident. We have to be new-minded. And it is with new information. Because with the old information, where are we going? Where are we going? Another year, another decade, same old thing. New information, new awareness makes for new people and renewed people and renewed hearts. Okay, let's do as Leandra is doing. Let's do as Judy is doing. Bill, Janine, Michelle, everyone on here tonight. Hope I didn't miss anyone. And everyone listening. Let's take care of our inner child. It's the best thing we can do, not only for ourselves, but for others. With that, I wish you well. I wish you peace. I wish you love. Next week, I will not be here in person. There will be a rebroadcast of one of the episodes. If you happen to have a favorite episode, let me know, and maybe I'll rerun that one next week. But I will be back live 2 weeks from now, and hopefully we'll have another interesting, thought-provoking, connected conversation. I'll take you all with me this week. I hope you do the same with one another and with me. All right, take good care. You've been listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Be well and good night.